Welcome to Australian Hunger. I am your host, Ben. On today's show, I've been with No Haven, a band from Melbourne. They were kind enough to come into the studio, given we're located in the same metropolis. So really good to have people in the studio. It sort of gives a better warmth, a little bit more connection to the chat, and enables us to kind of get a little bit more freer, which I think you'll hear in the conversation we have. So that coming up in a little bit. Before I get to that, something which came up in conversation, something that probably came up in the conversation because I think I raised it, to be honest, because it's something I've been thinking about, is algorithms and the effect they kind of have. You know, I think about these topics more broadly, particularly because I've got another podcast which tends to focus a bit on these issues. I actually had an episode 2 weeks ago which dived in fairly deep into it. Podcast is called The Eclecticast if you're interested. But for this podcast, where it sort of comes into the realm that I'm involved in, music, is the algorithms that are used by social media and music tools. And by music tools, I'm talking about places like Bandcamp, Spotify. So I use Bandcamp as a major tool to discover music, to search out potential bands that I just want to listen to in general. But specifically for this podcast, it's bands that I want to interview. Australian bands, New Zealand bands, occasional bands from overseas. But like when I'm actually trying to discover music, I'm really looking at these Australian bands. And the problem with Bandcamp is it can be very difficult to search for something in particular. It has a discover feature which enables you to search by a particular tag like metal or a subgenre, as well as Melbourne and Sydney. So you can say, okay, I want to see metal bands for Melbourne or metal bands for Sydney, which is useful for me, but it's not particularly broad and it doesn't really get to what I'm actually interested in. So its discover feature only allows you to combine those tags. It's not some sort of free tool or some advanced search would make actually be really useful for me. It's very narrow, and if you're interested in Australia as a whole, if you're interested in a different city like Brisbane or Adelaide, which I definitely am, you're kind of out of luck. If you actually want to look for metal in those particular cities, what you'll have to do is raise that tag individually and just search the entire catalogue of music from Adelaide, let's say. And that can be annoying because not all metal bands are apparent from their album covers or their names. Often they are. We too tend to be stereotypical, but not always. And just back to the algorithm part of it, with the new arrivals, it's kind of difficult to describe if you haven't used Bandcamp, but you can say, I want to do Sydney metal. You can either say the best-selling or new arrivals, but I don't think the new arrivals does it the way we would expect to do it, because some albums have been there for 6 months, some albums which I would expect to be in there are not in there. So I don't know how these algorithms actually function, and that kind of makes things difficult, especially for bands who are trying to get up in the algorithms. Yeah, they're not even sure what they actually have to do. Instagram, which I occasionally peruse, doesn't allow you to sort posting by time and date. It only allows you to do it by whatever they deem important. Is that? I don't know. This is annoying because I'm not that interested in Instagram in general. I'm only interested in seeing from the bands that I've followed, the labels, the PR things that I've followed, some of the posts that they're posting in case it's interesting news to me. And it kind of makes it very difficult to determine if I'm seeing the same thing again and whether I'm seeing everything if I can't see it by date and time, because I've got no sort of comprehension of where I am in some sort of arbitrary list that they've made. Now, obviously it makes sense that they've got this option. They've apparently done a bit of study and says lots of people miss out on reading important things or looking at important photos. But that's not why I use Instagram. And why can't I have the option to use the tool I want as opposed to some sort of arbitrary thing that they've laid out for me? I personally don't use Spotify, but I also wonder about their ability to, and I think we'll raise it in the interview about it tends to sort of create a bubble for you. So although we now have more options than ever to discover music with ease, it's controlled by companies which don't really have necessarily an interest in you discovering all new music. They have an interest in promoting things either that they expect you to purchase or they expect you to continue to consume their product. I love Bandcamp, and I don't necessarily expect them to have that same kind of motive. A lot of the products that are promoted by their discovery feature, I don't expect many people buy because they seem to be on the lower end of the market. But like, even if it's just an algorithm that's supposed to work well but isn't, that's still an algorithm that doesn't work in the way we expect or in a way we can necessarily figure out. And, you know, it's all well and good for me complaining. I run a podcast, but bands rely on these platforms, other platforms like Facebook. And it's very opaque about how their content actually makes its way to consumers, which makes it very difficult for bands to try and figure out how to increase their reach. And, you know, I could go on forever about these kind of things. I have in a different podcast, but it's very concerning that such aspects of our lives are kind of dictated by these algorithms. You know, we think of these platforms, but the algorithms are really key to some of the parts which which kind of entrap us in particular modes of thought and kind of exclude us from discovering new things. But enough of that. No Haven, Mikey and Will were kind enough to come into the studio. They released a new album, Deep End of Shallow Lives, which is out now. It was really good in particular to hear them they were talking about the fact that they maybe didn't have enough time to do everything they wanted. Still a really great album, but you know, some of the dissatisfaction that they maybe felt with this album, which is really good to hear and really kind of illuminates the process. They'll be playing in Melbourne in April, supporting Cult Leader at the Tote on the 13th and Pagan at Stay Gold on the 19th. And the songs they play during the interview are Cesspool, Sinkholes and Nervous Wreck. This is Mikey and Will from No Haven. Mike and Will, the vocalist and guitarist respectively for Melbourne band No Haven, whose debut album Deep Ends of Shallow Lives is out now. Guys, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
In studio, I really appreciate it.
Oh, no drama at all.
So let's start back at the beginning. When did the band start?
Band started, I think, 2015, 2016.
Yeah, about the end of 2015. Me and Will we've been drinking buddies for a couple of years now, and similar interests in music, and we've just been drinking beers at the pub, talking shit, talking about which bands we want to start, and a lot of similar ones came up like Converge and Cult Leader and stuff, and it pretty much flew from that. Our friend Alex moved down from Tasmania, and we got him involved and tried a few bass players, and eventually got another Tasmanian in, and Angus, and it just kind of came together naturally from that.
Yeah, so I'm initially from Tassie as well as Alex and Angus, so it's all this very incestuous music scene. So I played in bands with Alex beforehand in Tassie, multiple bands, and then he moved up, so we're just like, okay, kind of works out. You know what we're doing, knew kind of how we played as musicians and stuff, so it all kind of just like gelled well from there.
So why did you guys all move up?
I ended up moving up. Everyone moved up for different reasons. I actually ended up moving up for an ex-girlfriend about 6 or 7 years ago. Didn't work out, and then just kept doing this. I guess started playing in bands and shit and never left.
Yeah, it's like Will played in a band called Party Vibes, and I played in a band called Weedy Gonzalez, and we were playing heaps of shows together and kind of knew each other from that. And I think we met at a Meredith Festival one year.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
Super Cooks. Now we're here.
And Will also played in a band called Trespasser in Tassie. Not sure if you might have heard of them, but he played in that with Alex.
Yeah, and then I left, and then Angus, who's in our band now, he's playing in that band instead of me. So yeah.
So in terms of like the name of the band, No Haven, where did that come from?
I have a massive list of band names that keeps on getting bigger and bigger. Even though I don't have any other bands on the go, I've still got this band name. I'm like, oh, that sounds fucking cool. But that came through we had this huge list. I would mention some things, and then the guys would be like, "Nah, I don't know about it." And then eventually came on something about Haven, and then we just went, "No, Haven sounds kind of cool." And then I realised, pretty much as soon as we went, "Okay, cool, call it No Haven, release an EP or whatever," realised there's about 1,800 other bands with the name Haven in it. There's that Bellhaven band from the suburbs of Melbourne. There's like one of our first shows was with them, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Like completely different styles of music. But
Sam Haven.
There's Will Haven from the States, I think. There's like every Haven under the sun, and they keep on coming up. There's these other suburban Melbourne bands I have no idea about. Like I keep on seeing stickers in, I think, Last Chance and Old Bar on the toilets, Hollow Haven or some shit. And I'm like, yeah. So we're stuck with it now because that's what we've done. We've done merch. We've done 2 releases, so we can't change it now.
We even had the EP recorded and a first show booked without a name yet. So we were under a significant amount of pressure to come up with something. So we ran with that. I wish we had a bit more time to name it, to be honest. But here we are.
Remember with when we were recording the EP, I remember talking to Mike Deslanders, who recorded us. I was like, what do you reckon about this name? So I think he kind of got the blessing from Mike, and he's like, yeah, that's cool. And then we realised about all these other bands. So here we are.
We nearly ran with Heavenless.
Heavenless was our first kind of grim one.
But we weren't really running those themes too much, so the name didn't suit the music.
Yeah, just changed up a bit.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's really funny in this kind of modern age, especially because, like, going back a little bit, who cares?
Yeah.
But, like, when people are searching, that's, like, the key thing for everything.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I was every name came up on Google search, and it was like, it was one band or a song name for some band in the States or some shit. Like, 200 views on YouTube. So it didn't really matter. It doesn't really matter too much, but, it's kind of funny when it was literally like our second show or some shit. There's another band with Haven on the name.
There's even that pizza chain, Pizza Haven.
There's Pizza Haven as well.
That's come up a bit.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the sound of the band. Interesting. And I'll probably I won't explain to you why. You guys can explain why. But like, talk a little bit. You mentioned Cult Leader, Converge, some of those kind of bands. But like, what was it that kind of made you focus in on that particular sound that you were interested in?
There's a few bands to start with. I've been playing with a lot of other bands beforehand, and my style of writing never really fit. I can write for other bands because I've played in a thrash band, I played in another band called Clowns, which is punk or whatever. But this style of music's kind of my natural way of writing through a lot of different music I listen to. So when I started doing it with Mike and Alex, I was like, okay, I want to do it's still like a style of we're going in a direction in a way, but it was almost like this is how I naturally write. I kind of just want to do that, and it was kind of fit in with what we liked anyway. So I think when we started, I was listening heavily to a band called The Secret from Italy, which are like a kind of dark hardcore band with like lots of black metal influence. So that was kind of like initially where I was going, but then like a lot of ambient post-metal influence and even some old metalcore influence and stuff kind of like started creeping in with a lot of like the weirder hardcore shit we listened to. So that's where a lot of it went. Kind of, I think that's where I guess the vibe comes from.
Bit of scrams as well.
Yeah, definitely a bit of that, and a bit of screamo and stuff as well.
When we first started like rehearsing and writing, me, Will, and Alex all like put a playlist together of what we envisioned what we'd want to sound like.
Yep.
We kind of just gelled it all together, so it was a bit of like old metalcore, old hardcore, old scrams, all that French stuff that you seem to like.
Yeah.
Will.
I'm wearing a French band shirt right now.
And it just kind of came from that.
Yeah.
And it's always been music I've wanted to write. I grew up going to a lot of those weird kind of shows, and spent a lot of time at the Cat Food Press and Irene's Warehouse, and saw a lot of weird and wonderful bands from back in that time and place in Melbourne. And
definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, I want to kind of get to the album more specifically in a little bit, but one thing that really sort of jumped out at me, especially kind of given like post-metal, using that kind of term broadly,
Yep.
its tendency to go on and on and on and you know, never get to the point until you're at 10 minutes into the song. You guys tend to have a lot of like, you kind of just jam it all in there. Shorter songs. Talk a little bit about that.
The kind of funny thing you saying that is because a lot of it, after we recorded it, because quite a lot of it was very rushed, a lot of the songs I wish I shortened or put more in, because I think a lot of it was like, it was quite like big and expansive, obviously like kind of post-metal vibes, but I didn't want it to drag on that much, you know what I mean? Because I think we've got, a lot of it has post-metal influence, but we still want that kind of like, almost like, a lot of it I want the kind of metallic hardcore, don't know what's coming up next kind of vibe on it. So that's kind of the aim with that, if that makes sense. So, so I think with some of the longer, heavy bits, I always try to like change it up and make it a little bit more interesting rather than just like, you know, deep sludge for 10 minutes, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we tried to get a bit of everything we wanted in one solid album. Yeah. So you kind of get a bit of it all. You get like the heavy, fast ones, you get some long melodic ones. And we definitely just went into the studio with a lot of skeletons of songs and kind of put it together there, which was a interesting way of doing it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of it was super, super rushed. So I was away for about 3-4 months with my other band, just touring around, and then when we got back we had 3/4 of it written about, and then in the 2 weeks after I got back we had like 4 or 5 days recording already booked in, so we had to within that 2 weeks like finish I think 3 or 4 songs, like heaps of little shit we wrote in the studio. It was super rushed, but I think it somehow worked in the end, so I think we're all right.
So let's sort of take it back a little bit. You finished your EP. When did you start working on the new album?
I don't know when we did. It wasn't straight away. It would have been when, like, I guess because we recorded it. We actually recorded it ages ago. Recorded it in August 2017. So it would have been maybe early 2017.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a lot of skeletons of songs that had already been worked. Some of them had been like written way beforehand that I've kind of brought back. Everyone's always got that riff bank with things that were recorded, I remember. But I think it was a little bit after the EP, got a little bit of traction on that, and then started writing on that. It was kind of hard because I'm in another band that's a bit more busy now, so I was kind of trying to find time to do this and make it right and make it do it justice, which is kind of the hard thing, but we got there in the end after stressing really hard before recording. So
definitely both the EP and the album, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves by booking it, and then just it's locked in now. We gotta get it done. So I think we booked in the album because Mike Deslandis, the guy that is the one that records all that stuff, we just booked in whenever he was free because he was locked in for a whole year pretty much.
He's a busy man.
Yeah, so we was like, all right, we got 6 months to put our heads down and get this shit done.
Because otherwise we don't do shit. We're like, okay, we'll book it. No, we've got to make the songs better. And then you don't end up doing anything. So if you book it, you put pressure and make yourself do it, which is a good thing.
Yeah, especially booking a first show unprepared as well.
Oh, just
giving ourselves a date to, make sure it's done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd just be jamming every couple of weeks and
not
really doing anything with it.
So, obviously, you'd written the EP, recorded the EP. Did you take any lessons from that? Anything that you wanted to change or improve?
I definitely did sound-wise. I wanted to make the drums just sound as punishing as hell as possible. So Mike knows kind of exactly what I wanted anyway. So I was just like, okay, with this one, I just wanted to make it sound like you're getting, run over by a steam train. Like when you hear the double kick, everything, which isn't like, obviously it isn't a black metal album, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have obviously the black metal crusty feel, but that's kind of not what I was wanting anyway. I just wanted to sound like you're getting punched in the face as soon as you hear a kick drum, which I think we successfully did. Like, he just nailed it on the bass, on the kick. Actually, all the drums. It sounds huge.
Alex, our drummer's a bit of a perfectionist as well. He's really, really good at building structures to songs.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, he's a vital piece of the band in terms of you know, all the weird timings and the weird bridges and stuff. And you know, we spent a lot of time tracking drums because you know, he was very, very picky and particular person with how he wants it to sound.
Yeah, definitely.
But bless him.
Yeah.
Even going back there, like lyrically, I think I was happy with, you know, how I approached it. Like I had everything tracked and had a whole long list of lyrics that I just pieced together over the 12 months since the EP. And then once it was tracked and I had the structures to work with, I sort of locked myself in a room for a couple of days, a couple of bottles of wine, a few Dexies, and you know, a few spliffs, and kind of pieced it all together at you know, the early hours of the morning. And then I was pretty happy with my approach to it. I'd probably do something similar, maybe less substances next time, but you know, that was the way I'd approach it.
Yeah, I remember we went to what's that video game bar in the city, and you brought your laptop and had some beers and did lyrics there.
Yeah, we would have band meetings at Bartronica and use their Wi-Fi and kind of put it all together there.
Worked out.
Yeah.
Now, something we've mentioned before is the length of the songs. Now, I think it was sort of pretty, you know, short to kind of mid on the EP. But there are a couple of standouts that are a bit longer, pushing the length a bit on this release. Talk a little bit about those.
Mainly the last song that kind of ended up being, I guess on the EP as well, that was the longest song as well, the last song. But that just kind of needed to be that length, I think, to have that effect. And that was like a droney, kind of like post-metal song to begin with. And before that, it was going to be that one first riff, the whole song. And I went, no, it's going to be boring as fuck. So then I changed it and put in these other stuff with it. But I think the way we were approaching it really is not going, like, searching for a time, but more just what suited the song. So whenever we wrote something, it'd be like, okay, this has too many parts or too little parts, it needs to go for longer, give it time to breathe and so forth. But as I was saying, like, a lot of it now, I'm like, I wish I put a little bit more little, you know, thingies in there to interest your brain a bit. But I guess no one really critiqued that about it, only myself. So I think it went all right. But some of the short ones, they're meant to be that short, I think. Like the 2-minute straight up hardcore bangers, I think it needs to be that much, that long to be have that effect. But yeah, it depends on what the vibe is.
Yeah, we had a few shorter, quicker ones that we scrapped last minute that we were I wanted to keep them on, but I think we wanted to keep it a 10 song under that album. That last song on the album, Driftwood, was probably the newest song we wrote before we hit the studio. And at that time, me and Alex were getting very into Almanra, so we were just trying to push Will into going down that style. So, yeah.
Now I want to sort of dive a little bit more into the writing, both you guys. So in general, like, so you talked a little bit about sketching out some songs. I'm gonna go into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But like in general, like, how does the band sort of come together how does something come together for the band?
Initially, a lot of it is I'm really shit at thinking up song, like, riffs and stuff on the spot. Sometimes I get lucky and some of it works. So, but majority of the time it doesn't. So, and I'm quite picky with something being good enough to make a cut or to be in a band or whatever. So most of it I kind of write at home, and a lot of it's kind of like when I'm just like sitting on my bed with a guitar fucking about, and then I'll loop it and then do second guitar stuff over that. Then what I'll do from that, so this is just the majority of the time we do it, I'll bring that to practice, jam it out kind of with Alex a bit more, and then obviously Mike will come over with some ideas over it and figure it out, and then we kind of just structure it from that and then try and piece it all together. So sometimes I'll have, not the majority of the time, sometimes I'll have a full song and then we'll just cut shitloads of it out and replace it with other things and so forth. So it's kind of it's not a quick process as much as we try and rush it. I just think I'm not an overly quick songwriter. So, and I want it to not be just bullshit. So I kind of like try and make sure it's good enough where I'm happy with it. And if I was listening to it, you know, by myself, I'd be stoked with it. That's kind of my aim. But then obviously the other thing is because it's not a band of just me, it's a band with 5 people. I need to make sure everyone's happy with it. And then so that's why it gets changed and it turns into a different thing. Most of the time better than what I had originally anyway.
Spend a lot of time arguing and, you know, telling everyone each other's ideas and parts of shit. But, you know, that's what makes a band.
Oh, definitely.
Work, you know?
And it's good because it's good, like, difference about not being just myself releasing it is because it has that vibe and it makes it way more interesting with some other stuff going on. So it's, makes it, it's a very communal effort in the end, which is good.
So I want to drill down your sort of, I don't know, writing, creativity individually. So like, you know, you're sort of coming up with those initial ideas. You're trying to track together vocals on top of what's sort of being generated. Yeah. How do you, what's your kind of process? Like, do you have moods? Do you have a particular source of inspiration? Like, how does it work for you to generate those ideas to sort of move the project forward?
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like phrasing the songs, I just go by the old Ozzy Osbourne trick. I remember he was once saying like he'd get the riffs and he'd just shout gibberish over the top of it, so he'd work out the phrasing and then piece it all together from that. So that's a similar way to how I would approach it. Once I've got the song handed to me, and I'd record the riff on my phone, and then I'd spend a lot of time just listening to it over and over again and just getting the mood for it. And I guess the mood of the album with Will's riffs are pretty dark. You know, I was going through a pretty shitty time through the whole process, so it kind of you know, came out a bit naturally. The band I was doing previously was more of a doom band, so I guess the stuff I was writing wasn't so personal. It was just, you know, writing violent words on a piece of paper and just trying to paint an ugly picture with words.
Yeah.
And I still try to do that a bit. So yeah, that's more or less my approach in terms of that. Like,
the way I write is a lot of it depends on what I'm listening to all the time. So I listen to a lot, luckily, because if I listen to one band, it would just be, if it was going to sound like The Secret, like I thought I wanted to do initially, it would probably be boring as fuck because it would just be a copy of The Secret. So whatever I'm listening to at the time definitely does influence how I write stuff. But half of the time is I'm like just on my bed riffing or trying to figure out dumb chords I don't know where they are because I haven't had proper practice. And then go, oh, that sounds cool, and then trying to work on that, and then it kind of just flourishes from that. But there's definitely usually key points that influence me to write something in a similar vibe or a way. So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess like, sorry, yeah, like in terms of the way I'd kind of approach it in that way would, you know, I'd find like one phrase or one sentence and kind of build it on that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my notebook in my phone and at home is like just long lists of phrases that I would just come up with late at night, or, you know, the thoughts you get before you go to sleep or that are keeping you up all night. You just pencil it down and forget about it and then come back to it when you kind of need something to fit that particular phrase.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Funny thing on that, on the song Claw Marks, that really quick frenetic one, I did that in my old work's toilet, which luckily there wasn't many people who worked there, into the voice recorder on it. So it came up in my head. I'm like, oh, I'm going to forget this shit. So I went in there and just went, did it, and 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 did it. And then listened back to that later and figured that out on guitar. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I've got it. Would have been the lamest shit to hear if you're just walking past though. So
that's how a lot of songs were written in my old band. Was just someone would be at work and a riff would pop in their head and they're like, oh shit, I can't forget this. So they'd pull their phone out and hum the riff into their microphone on their phone. And then when they get home later, get the guitar out. And that's a good way of putting stuff together, I guess.
But nearly all the time I get that is while I'm in the shower. And then, because you're not doing shit, you're just washing your body, enjoying the join the water, and then you think of a sick riff, and then you're like, fuck, I'm in the shower, I can't record it or can't play guitar. And then as soon as you get a guitar out of the shower, you usually forget it. I'm like, oh, it's gone. Called a mind riff. And then Party Vibes had a song about that, mind riffs.
Mind riffs.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's funny like that, because what's up with the brain?
Oh.
What's it doing? Like, because you're just chilling.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're thinking, you're probably not necessarily thinking of music.
Yeah.
And like music, not like ideas or words, like musical stuff will happen in your brain.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Yeah, it's like I've had times where I've written and like I'll just start playing something and it's like, oh, this is sick, and then I'll chuck my headphones in, and then that riff that I thought that I'd come up with was like something I'd been listening to a week ago that I forgot about, and I was like, oh shit.
I straight up copied a riff with one of my old bands in Tassie. He's playing this hardcore band, and wrote the song. I'm like, yeah, sick. Got this like real ignorant mosh bit at the end, and then realised it was a exact note for note copy of a mosh riff out of a Comeback Kid song, like a really old Comeback Kid song. And I'm like, oh, I need to fucking change this. So we had to go in, just like change it slightly so it worked. I'm like, yeah, it's all right.
Oh, that's funny. So the album was produced, mixed, mastered by the same people as EP. Why did you choose to go down that same route?
Mike has been... He's always been great, but I think he's just been honing his craft more and more recently. Especially, he does everything from like Cosmic Psychos to... you probably heard his other band, Yulva, which he's recorded as the best Australian like heavy release I've heard in ages. And that came out before we started recording, and I was just like, this sounds insane. And I think we just trust him. And he's one of those people who are really similar to us. So it's like, you can kind of say whatever you want or like, and he'll do it or do it better than what you're thinking to start with, which I think with nearly everything, especially with guitar tones, all this type of shit. So we've like listened to all the, a lot of the same bands he likes, we like, or vice versa, and we kind of gradually got to know that more the more we got to know him. I think firstly when we first recorded with him, I didn't know shit about him. I just knew he was in a band called Coerce. I think Mike knew more.
Yeah, I was a fan of stuff he's produced and put together, and I was like, oh, we gotta go with this dude.
Yeah.
He's like doing all the good heavy stuff at the moment that Australia seems to have been lacking in that sort of department. Like we were either him or Jason from Goat Sound.
Yeah, we even weighed up Joel Taylor as well, who's also fantastic, and he's done one of my other bands as well, which would have been definitely one of the other options. But then we decided to go with Mike, and then we just vibed him out even more. And it's just, he just knows kind of exactly what we want as a band. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I was a big fan of that Robotosaurus album, and I thought for ages that Hid was the one behind the channels of that. It turns out it was the old studio that he used to own.
Oh, yeah.
But I was like, oh, we can go with Mike. He recorded that Robotosaurus album. Then we get there. He's like, oh, I never recorded that. So it was
kind of worked out though.
Yeah. Deception.
But we've been like with the new release especially, we've had amazing like people just saying about the actual quality of the production and how it sounds. So like, I've listened to a podcast recently with these dudes in the UK, and they're like, sounds like amazing production, but like, I don't know how to describe it. I said it was really good production, but sounds like it's like got a forest vibe or something to it. They said something really funny, and I'm like, I don't really get that, but it was like they're vibing it. I think because there's a lot more, the vocals are quite dark and a bit more rough than a normal high production album, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess I just use an SM58
yeah.
rather than an expensive microphone, because that's what I feel most comfortable with in terms of getting the best performance out of me in the weirdest way of saying that. But yeah, and we also were big fans of just anything that Brad Boatwright had touched.
Yeah.
Shouts out to him if you're listening, but never met the guy. But yeah, his name on records just stuck out for me a lot. Like he'd even done all the Sun records and High on Fire,
or the Nails ones as well.
If you type his name in Discogs and see the stuff he's mastered, you're like, oh,
that's
wow.
insane. Knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he was very affordable, very quick, very very responsive, and yeah, I'd definitely go with him again if we needed a master an album.
Sure.
So I want to ask you a couple of sort of more specific questions about the album. Sinkholes features saxophone.
Yeah.
Interesting choice. I guess in general for heavy music, except if like you're an avant-garde band. As far as this is, I know I wouldn't. If you're on the phone, I wouldn't bother you with this shit. But I was at a friend's house and we're watching. Do you know John Zorn?
No.
So he's like, avant-garde saxophonist.
No.
And he's one of those guys who dipped his toe into like metal/grindcore just because he's so out there. Like most other sort of proficient saxophonists wouldn't bother. And so we're watching a concert of his, and he was like doing improvised jazz. But for the first half of the gig, he was like conducting the improvised jazz and sort of looking at the guys and just pointing his head and pointing at the people and like getting them to do stuff. And then he's like, you know what he does. He's like almost atonal, mindless, blowing into a saxophone. Shit, where was I going with that? Yeah, saxophonist. So yeah.
Where do we come to that? I think I know where I came to that initially. I think I was listening to a lot of the song Blow Your Trumpets, Gabriel by Behemoth, and it has big horns at the end. I was like, I want some big fucking horns at the end of this, but on a D-beat hardcore song. And then I didn't know what horns they were, and then I think I was Googling it, and I think I when is it this? And it was like, let's just go with sax. Because we had a mate who played sax, my friend Mika Coleman, so we got him in, I gave him a 6-pack and he laid down some sax on it. And what we did to make it sound a bit more grim, because you can't realistically get as low as we wanted to get. So what we did was one take, split it in two, and then pitch shifted one of them down an octave. So I just had the 2 octaves going, or one like way lower. So that's what happened with that. Yeah. It's a bit weird, Saxon, and that's what I was like. That's why I find it funny, though.
Yeah, that was when you gave me the idea. When you pitched it to me, I was like, "Fuck yeah, man! Let's get some saxophone."
I think half our band though was like, "That's the dumbest idea ever." And then I got him in to play it because no one knew what we were doing with it. And then I got him to play it, and everyone was like, now I get it." It was good.
It was even, we just wanted to get an extra layer under it that would kind of, bring it out a bit more. Like even in the EP, I had all this noise equipment that we'd just tracked a extra feedback layer under it.
Yeah.
It was like this little spring box with contact mics through like a delay pedal and all sorts of stuff, and I was just scratching it and fucking with the sounds of it, and then that's just kind of a real subtle layer under some of the songs on the EP.
Yeah.
But yeah, I lost that thing, so we didn't.
You lost it?
I found it again moving house, but I didn't know where it was at the time of recording. So yeah, maybe I'll bring that back for a future endeavor.
Sick.
And Riffwood, there's a sample on it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
What's that from? Why'd you include that?
That was from watching that. I watched that movie like a few months before it. It's a movie called Bad Boy Bobby. It's like an old Australian movie. Like I really wanted a sample, but I wanted to make sure it was like an Australian sample, and like it's kind of like a cult old Australian movie from the 80s about this guy that gets out of a mental home and goes nuts on the world and just can't handle his surroundings. So yeah, it's a pretty wild movie, and yeah, there could have been a million quotes I could have got from that, but that was just one particular one where this I think he's like a shrink or a doctor is just telling her about how the whole world's against you pretty much, and there's no one ever going to be looking out for you, ever.
It's good. It works.
Yeah.
It's a good finishing quote for the last one on the album, which is kind of like fits in with all the lyrics with it as well. So, yeah, that's why we put it in. It's good.
Some more general questions about the album. So, title. Where's that come from? Why'd you choose it?
It's actually the very last lyric on Driftwood, on the very last song. I think... which Mike wrote, and I remember when we were at the pub at Bartronic arranging lyrics, having a couple of beers, people playing like Nintendo 64, like Mario Kart and shit right behind us, and we were like, alright. And that lyric for me, when I was reading through Mike's lyrics, kind of stood out, and I think we kind of had a discussion about it. We're like, kind of fits in with the whole theme of the album, I'd say.
Yeah, and I guess the very last line of the album, for that to be the album title, it kind of all built into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time umming and ahhing of what the title should be, or if we should just call it the self-titled album, or
No Haven 2.
or the Black Album, or the White Album. I don't know,
What about the artwork? Who'd you get to do that? And what was their brief?
The artwork is done by a guy I know in Madrid called Rodrigo Almanegra. He actually goes by a different name, really, but his art name is Rodrigo Almanegra.
Spanish pal.
Yeah. But I kind of got to know him through... we played a show with a band called Rollo Tomasi from the UK, which is actually that first show we played with that Belhaven band as well. And Rollo Tomasi's merch was amazing. I was like, this looks fucking awesome. Right up my vibe. So what I did is I got on the old internets and searched up their big cartel, found the artist, and then emailed him to actually do a t-shirt initially. So he did, we did a t-shirt with his Plague Doctors on it, and he absolutely killed it. So we've always been discussion with him, I think, since that. And I went over with my other band and played in Belgium, and he actually came to me with the original artwork for the t-shirt, and he gave it to me. And it was like way smaller than I thought. It was like a tiny little square. And I'm like, what the fuck? I thought this was huge. It was like this big, but super, super fine detail. And we've just been in contact ever since that. And then when this one came out, we were initially going to do a photo within the same vibe as what Rodrigo did anyway. We're very umming and ahhing what we wanted to do, because we didn't want it to look, too pretentious or anything, and kind of like we wanted to fit the album very well. And then after the discussion with Rodrigo, and then obviously all of us, we ended up going down the art route, or drawing route, and he just nailed it, whipped it up super quick. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's killer. Did a few little tweaks and stuff, and then that's what it is.
Shout out to Rodrigo. I'll be in Spain in a couple of months. Let's hang out, buddy.
Yeah. Really good dude.
So I do a little bit of checking around to see like whether you got on any upcoming gigs. I notice you don't, but on Facebook, I think you said you're working on it.
We do.
Any specific plans?
So I'm guessing by the time this will be out, it'll be well and truly announced. We're playing with Cult Leader at the Tote, and another show at Staygold on Good Friday with Pagan, Blind Girls, Outright, and Boundless.
Is that big of a lineup?
Yeah.
Holy shit, it's huge.
Bring it up, just so I don't forget to mention anybody. But who was it?
Yeah, just those two locked in for the moment. We're kind of looking into maybe doing our own headline because we released this album. We haven't even done a headline show, but we haven't played for over a year, so it's kind of I've been I think our first jam is next week. But I've been trying to relearn the riffs that I've forgotten. So like, got all my guitars set up, it's all good, and I've been jamming at home going, okay, this is how it goes, and now it's back in my brain again, so we're good to go. But got those two shows. Really psyched to play the Toby Cult Leader, because that's going to be fucking amazing.
Yeah, just trying to lock in more dates, because everyone's pretty busy. I'm going overseas, Alex is going overseas, Will's about to do another album cycle with these other bands, and our guitarist Alan has just kicked off Grim Rhythm, and they seem to be kicking goals as well. So
they're playing at the Tivoli in Brisbane with Ghost today.
Yeah.
Yes, they got a big show going on. But doing that, and then like we're just trying to fit it in. That's we're all so busy, and everyone's got other bands as well, so it's kind of sorting that out.
All in the same room at the same time, but we'll definitely try to get some stuff going, and hopefully finally play Brisbane before the year is done.
That's our main aim, is to play Brisbane, because we haven't done that yet.
Big goals here. Play Brisbane.
Go slightly north in the country.
Yeah.
If it's one of the weekends that Angus doesn't have a wedding on, which seems to be every single weekend.
Yeah, Angus is going through that phase in his life where he's just he's got engagement parties and weddings, and I guess that's what pushing 30 is does to a man. But
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have my other podcast friend. She's got lots of weddings and interrupts that podcast.
It's all at the same time as well. It's never split up. It's always like, bam, got heaps.
I'm kind of jealous, to be honest. Like, weddings are a good time. Like, if any of my friends are listening, please get married. please invite me to your wedding.
I've only been at one proper wedding, and like, I'm 30 now. I've done fuck all. Like, I've been to one wedding. I think what I did was, annoyingly, all my mates from Tassie, I moved up ages ago, so I've become disconnected with everyone a bit. So, like, only some of my other, like, really close mates are about to do their thing now. But heaps of my kind of, like, mates who I'm still friends with got married, but I haven't really chatted to them for years. So I've missed out on the whole wedding season. And none of our Melbourne mates, actually, now they are starting to get married.
I'm looking forward to the, when everyone starts getting divorced. Because those divorce parties are going to be real fun.
Yeah, they're
probably going to be more loose than the weddings itself. So, that's something that'll happen later in life for sure.
Divorce parties actually sound sick.
Yeah, man. I'd love to get divorced.
I want to get married just so I can get divorced straight after and have my divorce party.
That's my intentions there.
So I want to kind of do a little bit of free sort of discussion, because since you're in studio, it's a little bit easier to have kind of the free discussions.
Yeah.
And then maybe finish off with a couple more personal questions. Like, talk a little bit about like what's it like to be in a band, because it's a very like weird thing to do, which most people don't do.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to explain. I think that the kind of the funniest thing to explain about this, I was going to talk about playing live, which is I find it really fun and a bit of a release. But I was just remembered an old Tassie mate who once said, like, I think we're going to Falls Festival or some shit, and it's like, why would you go and watch a band live when you can listen to them on CD? And I guess from an outside perspective, some of it does sound, even though most people like watching live bands, a lot of it from an outside perspective might seem a bit weird. So I do get that question.
Yeah, I definitely think the older you get, like, the weirder it seems to the people that aren't involved in that world at all, like, work colleagues and, Christmas gatherings and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think after the age of maybe, your early 20s, it stops being cute and is like, well, what else are you doing with your life?
It's kind of weird because it kind of like the more you do it, it almost becomes a bit of an identity. And I think a lot of it, I don't know, like nearly all my mates play in bands or are involved in bands or go and watch bands all the time. Like it's almost becomes, it is a scene. So like we're definitely involved in our, I guess, Melbourne scene. I think with being in a band, I think the main thing is just being able to create something and release it. So I guess that's the main benefit, or the rush, I guess a rush, if it is a rush, that you get from it, I think, making music, is being able to go, okay, cool, we made this on our own time, we spent time doing it, and it's come out like this, and people enjoy it, some people don't enjoy it, but I think that's the kind of the main thing, and the gratification you get when someone's like, oh, that was sick, or whatever it might be, so I think that's the main reason. Like, I'm stoked if I have, some these English dudes on the other side of the world who've listened to my album, who I've never met beforehand, and they enjoyed it. Like, that's awesome to me. Like,
yeah, I find it a bit, like, I'm just an awkward person, and I can't really take a compliment, so if somebody says they like my band, I'm just like, oh, yeah, thanks.
It is kind of always weird, like, oh, yeah, cheers, yeah.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Did you actually listen to that? Cool.
But I guess that's it. I guess the other thing is obviously you get to hang out with your mates and chat shit when you do it, Like, we're people, we're very social, so we don't necessarily need to be in a band, but I think it's that one thing, it's the main creative thing that we need to go, okay, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, I use it. It's definitely like an outlet for me in some way. Like, it's a good, especially doing vocals.
Oh, definitely.
It's it's a very nice release in some regard, especially playing shows. Like, I try to let it all out, and to the point I'm shaking and sweating and stuff. But I'm sure you get a lot of people who sing in heavy bands, say the exact same thing about doing that style of music and the release that you get from it. Like, yeah, it's surreal. Like, playing shows and stuff, like, definitely fall into a different space and kind of just let loose, and it's it feels good, man.
Yeah. There's not many other ways you kind of, I guess, to be able to release a little bit of yourself in a way. So I think music, to a lot of people when they're creating it, it's very personal. I think this music, the way I write it, it's very like, that's the way I write, so it's kind of like an aspect of myself if I show that, you know what I mean? And the same for you, when you're like writing lyrics and singing, it's definitely like an aspect of yourself. You're going, cool. Yeah. So then I think people watching that, they can go, okay, cool, that's these people. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but I think that's kind of the pushing yourself out there a bit so people can, I guess, see it a bit.
Playing it live is definitely where I get the most out of it. Like, even like rehearsing and stuff, just kind of sitting in the corner drinking a 6-pack, observing, and then once everything's all thrown together and we can rehearse, that's when I kind of get a bit more involved. But it's certainly, I'd do it more for the playing shows aspect of it all. Yeah. Like, yeah. Whether it's to a room of like, 5 people or 50 or, more than that, like, it's always good to let loose.
Yeah, definitely.
Once in a while.
Come on!
So I think especially at the top of the show, you mentioned kind of the dark, heavy. Can't remember what adjective you used. But yeah, like that kind of, this kind of space of music.
Yeah.
Where like heavy metal, hardcore, kind of very broad. Like you can have very positive, kind of, more melodious music, but then. There is a very sort of specific part of it which has a very aggressive focus, which is definitely where this kind of band fits. Talk a little bit about the attraction of that particular idea.
Well, we pretty much picked the worst type of genre to market ourselves. It's like, I don't know. I think it's because a lot of that is what I guess I listen to. I think that type of weird. Like I'm just naturally drawn to it. I think because it's a little bit different, and I don't know, maybe it's a bit more dark, or I don't know what's going on.
I crack a lot of jokes and have fun a lot, but deep down I'm a pretty cynical person. So I feel like naturally I kind of go that direction.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff I'm into is that. So a lot of the music I listen to, a lot of the books I read, movies I watch, kind of goes down that path. And yeah, it definitely stems from all of that, and just channeling that wherever I can. Like I don't think I've written a happy, positive song the whole time I've been playing in bands, which is like high school.
I find it really hard to write happy music. Really fucking hard to write it. So the other band I'm playing is like a pretty posy, like punk band, and I can write for it, but it's hard. And some of the songs we're writing for No Haven are quite a lot more complicated and stuff going on. But I find that way easier than writing a normal structured kind of like punk song, which is a weird thing. Like I don't get why, but it's kind of hard for me to write that way.
This is not music I really typically listen to. I think I was in the car with a friend and had on Blink-182 for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And although it's not music that I necessarily enjoy, there is something very admirable about the ability to be that kind of catchy.
Yeah, definitely.
There's something, like, I don't know whether it's just, fluke that people just happen to like that music, or they just had this orientation towards writing catchiness. But, like, it's not something people can just do, even if the music at sort of 10,000 foot level is very simple.
Yeah, definitely. I think the main thing is Blink-182 obviously have the choruses, but there's an actual scientific structure of songs. I think it's like verse, chorus, bridge, outro or some shit. I can't remember what it is, but it's scientifically proven to be the most liked format of writing a song. So if you write within that, which the majority of pop artists always do, and you know how to, you obviously it's more to that, but if you know how to do that and write a good catchy chorus within the right thing, that's why they're so big.
Yeah, but I don't know how, all that funk music me and you listen to in the car and, real happy soul and love songs. I don't know how they'd fucking write those songs.
Yeah, I have no idea.
That's why I can appreciate that.
I really fucking love disco music.
Yeah, we were listening to, we listened to a lot of drum and bass on the
way here.
Yeah, because old mate from the Prodigy died. We just went into a bit of a hole in regards to that kind of era of music, but goddamn, man.
Prodigy and Faithless on the way here. It was sick. So when it's dark later, we're gonna bliss out and pump Faithless really high and pretend we're on 18 pingers at 4 a.m. in the Berghain, just going fuck. Yeah. Drive at 170 k's an hour.
Yeah.
The Footscray.
I find the space that I really listen to heavy music is public transport is really a big one for me. Just listen to the most aggressive music ever, or when I'm driving around by myself. But I find if I'm with company, I've got some tracks that I feel like it doesn't matter who's in the room, you just chuck it on and everyone can sort of vibe it in a way or get nostalgic over it in some regard.
That's definitely a heavy music thing. I think heavy music for a lot of people will depend, especially this kind of niche, if you'd say, of heavy music. It's quite personal for people, I think. I don't listen to that, most of this shit, unless I'm with you, maybe, but most people don't listen to it out in the open with a lot of heavy music because the majority of people just don't like it. You know what I mean? So
it's weird. It's like, yeah, it's reserved for music I listen to when I'm mostly by myself.
Yeah.
And it's it's a weird thing, but it's always been something that has drawn me into it. Just the aggression and intensity.
Yeah.
I guess the sonic intensity of it as well. Like, yeah, I just like to be crushed by stuff. Like, especially watching it live too. Like, I feel like I get the most out of watching something heavy.
Yeah.
If I'm watching a band live, or just like, needing earplugs because it's just so blisteringly loud. Like,
Are you in the same boat with any of that? You think like it's like something about heavy music? Do you think that you're more drawn to as well?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of this weird thing because it's like this disposition that you have, and it's difficult to analyze your like state.
Yeah.
Because like you're thinking about how you are, and like you just feel how you are.
Yeah.
But like it's interesting because it's so true about listening to that kind of music sort of by yourself.
Yeah.
Because I have a good friend who we have kind of a bit of a crossover in our musical tastes, and we'll listen to like music. If we listen to that kind of music with each other, like we'll mostly sort of just be silent.
Oh yeah.
Because like we're
you're
specific.
vibing it.
Yeah, because we're specifically listening to it.
Yeah.
So, no, it is interesting like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what makes us this way.
Very true.
It's good to be a weirdo.
Yeah.
So I want to sort of ask you some more personal questions now. Will, start off with you. When did you pick up the guitar, and what was it made you stick with it?
I picked up the guitar, I think, I know the first riff I played. My brother gave me, I had like a nylon string acoustic and I was 7, and he listened to a shitload of old Metallica, and I played the main heavy riff. Was the first riff I've ever played, To Live Is To Die by Metallica of Justice for All, which listening back to it now is that is heavy as fuck when I was 7, but I never listened to any other metal for like my whole primary school. I listened to like Presidents of the United States of America and Grinspoon and shit. That was pretty much my primary school, apart from Metallica. But I don't know why exactly I stuck with it. I think I just got interested in it and started getting into bands. Started like learning, I think maybe like Metallica tabs or some shit. But when I was in primary school, I had like a few kind of like basic lessons, like doing the normal like G, C, D major chords and all that type of shit. But I think I didn't have any other formal lessons after that, so all of that was just fiddling around at home, and my parents listened to me play really bad new metal songs in the lounge room, playing heaps of like Sunk Loto and shit. Sunk Loto actually kind of mad if you ever go back to it.
Yeah.
No regrets.
I can't think of a single Sunk Loto song. They were Australian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a rehash recently. It was actually right. But
I'm pretty sure I've played them on the radio.
Oh no shit.
Only because I was doing this thing where I was doing 24 hours of heavy metal straight.
Yeah.
Playing it for 24 hours.
Were you awake for 24 hours?
Yeah. The last 4 hours. But the way I sort of thought to arrange it was I'll play like different genres for periods of time. So I'd play an hour of thrash, 2 hours death metal, 2 hours of black metal.
Yeah.
And I thought I'll play an hour of like alt new metal. But also the problem is that the radio station had restrictions, which meant you could only play like 60% international, 40% Australian. So I had to find Australian new metal bands.
Yeah.
And bands I'd never come across. Like,
surely you had 28 Days somewhere in the mix. They had the whole Olympics.
I can remember that I had Super Heist, Sunk Lotto.
They're the main two.
Yeah, I'm not sure who else. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they had like...
There would have been heaps of bands in the Fraser scene around that time.
Yeah.
That would have sounded like that, but never made the cut.
A local Tasmanian new metal band called Bionic Bilby I think it was the early 2000s, did a road safety video. I think it was like a drink driving. It was a drink driving video, and they were like, "You blew out." And it was like the most new metal thing of all time, and that was on the TV every day.
There were 2 bands from Sunbury that were. They may not have been new metal, but to me they're new metal. They were like Defect and what was was the other one?
Defect is such a new metal band.
And Rupture. And Rupture ended up naming themselves Circus and had like a Southern Cross in their logo. And had this video clip that was filmed by a uni student with like them all like in the spa drinking VBs with chicks. And yeah, I think they all, I don't know where they are now, but I'm sure they all have
touring
kids.
Europe.
Yeah.
Every Australian band from the early 2000s that never made it here is all touring Europe.
Well, I think that band Defect ended up, guys from Defect ended up being in that band Boris the Blade, which got pretty successful by the
Yeah, I think they got quite big.
things. Yeah.
And what about you, Mikey?
Me, I guess, bit of new metal talk. I remember watching a lot of video clips as a kid, and the ones that really stuck out to me were, the Korn videos and all that. We're talking like, 11, 12-year-old Mikey.
Yeah.
And then, someone's stoner dad had a, Metallica and Slayer CD and, got into that through that and spent a lot of high school just trying to listen to the most like unlistenable to my parents kind of music as I could. When I was like 13, 14, me and a friend got a band together and jammed in my parents' barn on the farm. And I couldn't play an instrument for shit. Like I tried playing drums and guitar, so I figured I'd give vocals a crack. And I just remember watching that video. It was like a Pig Destroyer video, and the singer JR's microphone broke, and he's just screaming on top of all the instruments, and like you can hear him crystal clear. I was like, that's how you do it. So I remember like having like a 10-watt like practice amp and a karaoke microphone that wasn't playing as loud, like couldn't amplify louder than all the other instruments, but I just try and yell over the top of it, and I guess that's kind of how I figured out what I could do with my voice in some ways. So
I definitely can't do it.
Yeah.
I tried that. There's one part in I was singing like 3 small sections on the album, and the one part in Claw Marks, which is like literally 2 sentences, I blew my voice out doing that. So if we tour like 4 days, I'm fucked. Which we've done before when we did the 3 or 4 days that Canberra Sydney thing. I like completely lost my voice on the last day, and I'd like sing 2 sentences in it.
Yeah, like I think I just subconsciously figured out a way to not fuck my voice or throw it up.
Yeah.
I guess over the years, all the ciggies I've smoked has kind of done all the damage needed to kind of to push it out as much as I can. But yeah, like I have no learned approach. It's more or less just trying to make it as loud as possible. And
A couple more packs will do our Tom Waits album. Tom Waits style album a few years.
Yeah, a bit of whiskey and I remember tracking the vocals in the EP and the album. I was drinking a lot of like whiskey and beers and smoking cigarettes after every vocal take. And just,
sure. Medical practitioners can definitely recommend that, actually.
Yeah.
So in terms of like, I don't know, vocalists, guitarists, are there any notable ones that are influential on you? I mean, apart from obviously Pig Destroyer.
I definitely do. I just need to like, for me, weirdly, if like listen to obviously the music we write, one of my main ones is very much influential of kind of like later in my life though, but Tom Sell from early Architects albums, which who's passed away now, but the first 2 albums they did way before they blew up, as a metal guitarist for like he was 16, 17, 18 or something, are ridiculous. And now they're just like a massive like stadium gent band, but the old shit was super super influential for me at a certain period of my life. So I had like 1 year straight listening to the one album, which is an album called Ruin by Architects, which is like changed the way I write a lot of anything with like any kind of like multiple notes that sound slightly metal, it's probably like influence from that in a way.
Yeah, mine vocally, definitely, yeah, as I said, JR from Pig Destroyer. I remember the first time I heard the first Daughters EP in high school, and just like the shrieking vocals on that, it was just like, whoa. And yeah, I guess like early Orchid, I don't know if you ever heard of that band.
Yeah.
Their first couple of albums were just punishing, just in the intensity. And when I decided to do a band again, after like a couple years break after high school, the first on the way to the first jam, before I like put any vocals, I was listening to I Hate God, and I guess like that, just the way it sounds, like over the top of the recordings, like it doesn't sound perfect. You can hear the voices break in the recording. Like they're definitely what's inspired me as a vocalist, if you'd call it that. Yeah.
I've definitely got like quite a few other guitarists inspire me, like I guess from bands that more relating to this music. So like obviously Kurt Bilal from Converge, and I guess a lot of the guitar work for like Italian bands like The Secret or Hierophant, which was kind of like directly influenced this band initially, or The Maya, which is kind of like a post-metal band. A lot of that type of style has kind of made what this is, I think.
Oh yeah, no, definitely Converge. It's definitely a big one.
Massive one.
Especially over the years, like I keep forgetting how much of an influence that that Converge was, since like I think I discovered them when I was like 14, because I saw everyone I went to the city and saw everyone wearing a Jane Doe shirt, and then I went to the record store and I saw that, and I was like, the fuck is this? And I like, that was the only thing I bought with my money from the fish and chip shop that I earned.
That's a sick natural way of finding music.
Yeah.
You know, when you like see something, you're like, like someone's got wearing some cool merch, and like, that's sick. And then you find the record or whatever, and you're like, cool, I'm gonna get it. Barely anyone does that anymore.
Yeah, it just so happened that every person I ran into that looked cool in my eyes at the time was wearing that Jane Doe shirt. I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
And I need to find out what that was.
It's good as.
Yeah.
It's funny, like I try and obviously discover new bands. A lot of that I sort of do through Bandcamp, because a lot of people put their stuff on from Bandcamp. It's like, Bandcamp makes it so difficult, because, you guys are fortunate. You guys are being, I don't know, algorithmically pushed up into what I'm looking for.
And that's good to hear.
And you're from Melbourne, so you've got your own tag which appears in like the discovery section. But like if you try and look for anything from Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, like you gotta fuck around by looking up the tags, and you gotta scroll down through all the genres. Yeah, it's like it's weird. Like there's this sort of not great ability to discover music.
It's weird. It's weird how algorithms work that way. Like I was saying to one of my mates the other day how we announced the album after having like we've got way more followers than when we firstly made a Facebook account or released the EP, but it got barely any traction to start with on the Facebook post. The EP that we released, firstly, before we had fuck all people who liked the fans, got more likes and comments than the album did after like 5 times as many people who liked the page.
I think they give you a good plug, and then once you start giving them money, they want some more out of it.
Yeah, it's fucked.
The best way of like discovering music, like I guess back in the day, was when there was all those blog spots. Do you remember those ones where like people would like upload an obscure demo or an album on like Mediafire, and then do a write up on it, like pretty much review this band you've never heard of.
Do you know where that's still popping off? Russia.
Yeah, we've noticed our album's been leaked on Mediafire and a few blogs, but yeah, fuck, that was the only way I got into like weird obscure music at one point in my life.
Yeah, that's the entirety of the Screamo that I've basically listened to. It's just like checking out like the Scrams blog, whatever.
Yeah, because there were some good ones that just like leaked Australian stuff. So like you'd hear a demo from a band in Brisbane or something that you'd never get the chance to see because they were just a small local bands, but you'd be able to get all their shit. And I found that was like a great way of discovering stuff like much better than Spotify. Like Bandcamp, I find is a bit hard to navigate.
Yeah.
As you're saying, like,
Spotify, after you listen to all the main artists that links you to, you just get linked to the same thing all the time. So I get my playlist and I'm like, I already listened to all these bands.
yeah.
But I guess I don't know how the algorithm works to go to new things I haven't listened to, but I think that's my issue at the moment, especially trying to find heavy music as well. It's kind of like I come across it really randomly when I find something I really like.
Yeah, there's like no sort of central way. It's like, hey, I want every Australian heavy metal release.
Yeah.
Which I don't think most people want, but I want because like it's just my thing.
Yeah.
So do you guys know the Metal Archives?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I scroll through that quite a bit. I'm not sure if you guys are on there. I don't know if they consider you metal, to be honest. But yeah, that's annoying because then you guys, which are awesome band, but they may have like issues with it because it's a bit hardcore. And so, like I don't think you're on there. And so like all these bands that either aren't on there, there's no sort of central place. It's like, hey, here's all the heavy music. Yeah,
I love hearing people try to categorize our band because it's like, I don't know, people that say that like, oh yeah, it's kind of like crust metalcore, blackened. It's like sick because there's like, it's real funny because there's usually like 5 different descriptions of the band whenever they talk about it.
I usually just shrug my shoulders. I don't know.
Yeah, it's metal band. I say everyone at work, I'm like, yeah, I've got punk band, then I've got a heavy band. That's what. I don't need to go too far into the genres of people.
Yeah, but yeah, it sucks. Like Missing Link Records. Did you remember that? Like that was like a vital part of like me discovering music as like a 13, 14-year-old. Like, and I don't think, especially in the middle of the city. Like I feel like kids that are just going to the city to check it out and see what it's all about. There's not that kind of thing anymore.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
They're not really going to know to go to this suburb and find this record store here, and there's not going to be an in-store. Like, they used to have Sunday afternoon in-stores, and like, yeah, I remember the one time I nearly saw Pig Destroyer there when I was like 15, but my V-Line train got delayed, and I rocked up just as they were like finishing packing up. But like, I saw some cool bands there. I saw like Insect Warfare play there, and like...
Fuck.
All sorts of like old Australian bands that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
One final question. What have you guys been listening to, watching or reading recently?
What have I been listening to? I'm going to get out my phone. What I've been doing on my... I've been listening to a lot on Spotify. I've listened to a really fucking cool Russian band called Wowod, which are quite similar to us. Naturally, I've been listening to a lot of Rival Mob lately, and what else have I been listening to? A lot of atmospheric shit. So I've been listening to a bit of like Niels Fram. What else? Listen to Lil Ugly Mane, which is the most like ignorant shit. Fuck, I don't know. It's a bit of a, goes all around the place. I listened to a really good like black metal band from Germany called Soul Grip recently, and someone got me onto. They're fucking mad, real good. Other than that, I don't know. It kind of goes around in circles. It really depends about how I feel when I get into a car, or like if I've slept, or I'm kind of like moody. I feel like I listen to heavier shit actually when I'm happier.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Or maybe if I'm well slept, if I'm in good peak physical mental condition, I listen to heavier stuff, I think. But if I'm kind of like barely slept or something, I'll put on something soothing.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, at the moment I've been listening to, like today I've just been listening to this band Brain Bombs. It was like this weird Swedish noise band that sings about real fucked up shit, like I'm not even going to mention the song titles. That New Daughters album for sure. King Dude. What else was I listening to? Recently discovered that Sun Kill Moon. It's like nice acoustic stuff.
I haven't given that a hoon yet.
And Swans has been getting a lot of like early Swans. Listen to them, like they've been getting a lot of spin on me lately. In terms of like heavy stuff, yeah, that new Cult Leader's been fucking popping out.
Yeah, I've been hearing that as well.
I discovered that old band from Brisbane, Manhunt.
Oh,
They recently put all their stuff up on Spotify, so giving that a hoon.
They're kind of like a power balance band, yeah.
Yeah. Like I think they came last time they came down was with like Shackles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that band Siege. It's like an power balance band from the 80s.
The drummer from... Well, have you ever seen Shackles live beforehand? They were drumming with 2 drummers for a while, and they're like a power balance band. It was just fucking mental. And one of their drummers with Blind Girls.
Yeah.
So I saw a band called Blind Girls from Brisbane on Gold Coast. And they're kind of like a scramsy, screamzo-ish band with like just hectic drums. And they're doing the Pagan tour, and they're so fucking good live. When I saw them on the weekend in this small place called the Burrow on the bottom of Brunswick Street. You've been there? It's like this size, but it was 40 degrees, no aircon, and a shitty fan in the corner, and it was so sick, but I could barely breathe. But yeah, they're really, really good, and the new album's really good as well.
Yeah, one of my favorite bands at the moment, like newer bands, is a band from New York, Uniform. They're like, they started off as drum machine, guitar, kind of channeled that old Godflesh ministry. It's like industrial, but it has more of a punk hardcore vibe.
Yeah.
Like the vocals over the top are just like so intense. Like it's the old singer of that band, Drunk Driver.
Alright.
And yeah, like they put out an album a couple of months ago that just fucking I haven't stopped listening to since it came out. It's insane.
Sick.
To what I've been reading. Hubert Selby Jr.'s book, The Room, which is about a guy who's like incarcerated. So maybe that's why I've been having these dreams. It's about this guy that's incarcerated, and he's just like, it's just a stream of consciousness about how he's gonna fucking break out and take revenge on the world. It's pretty dark and grim.
Mike's dream, when he told me in the car, because I've had nightmares recently, and he was like, get this. Had a dream that he was in a jail, but it was the upstairs of the Bendigo, but it was a jail. That was his dream,
yeah. Yeah. And watching, I'm in the middle of watching this 4-part documentary about this married couple that got real famous because when she decided to divorce him, she cut his dick off. And it's like a 4-part.
Hey, is that the one, was that Frankencock?
No, not Frankencock.
There was this porn star that got his dick cut off because he was cheating on his wife or his girlfriend at the time. But, so this is before he was a porn star, actually. Then she drove down the street, and I don't know how she cut it off and then ran off with his dick, but threw it into a bush. It was obviously a piece of shit, but then he reclaimed the cock somehow, and they could somehow stitch it back to him.
Yeah.
And he became a porn star afterwards, and I'm pretty sure the movie's called Frankencock.
No, it's the guy that made the documentary is the guy that did that Get Out movie, like Jordan Peele. The first episode doesn't get into the porn aspect of it, but the first one is just about like all the cops like getting the calls like, oh, this woman's cut her husband's penis off and can't find the dick, and like it's
I need to watch this real bad.
Like it's like the idea of it's real funny, but then it starts getting into the details and why she did it. It's like, oh, this is fucking grim, but yeah, it's an interesting story. You should definitely check it out. I forget what it's called, but I'm sure if you Google the right things.
Did he deserve it?
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
he was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't have even had his dick sewed back on, but here we are. But they got really famous because of it.
No shit.
Yeah.
I'm on that the Mexican Narcos train. It took me a while because it's like a different show as the Colombian ones, but now I'm into it. It's good.
Oh yeah, the show that because it's Wednesday, I'm gonna check it out. The that new show on Stan where it's like Steve Buscemi is God and Daniel Radcliffe's like works for Heaven Incorporated, answering people's prayers, and like fuck man, like I didn't think it'd be as funny as it was, but
it's alright.
Definitely worth checking out. Like Steve Buscemi makes a good like washed up alcoholic God. Like it's
Yeah, I can't remember where I saw something about that, but someone was talking about like the idea that capitalism is so brainwashed us that like even when we conceive of other things like heaven, we just implement capitalism in heaven.
Yeah. So good.
Oh, it's definitely a great show. You should check it out. This is like him sitting on the couch, like drinking, watching the news, and he's just like, "Oh man, I fucking give up." Like,
so you've mentioned other band a couple of times. Talk a little bit about that, and Mikey, I don't know if you've got anything else going on, but
I play in another band called Clowns. We got an album, which stupidly, I organised the release of the No Haven album on the exact same day that we announced the Clowns album. So I had to like double juggle shit, and it was the dumbest shit of all time. But we're touring from like June for the rest of the year, so go around to Europe and the States and Japan and stuff. So we need to, in the No Haven campus, try and get some shows in before that happens, and then hopefully try and organise some shows when we come back. Because that's one of the main things that makes it harder for us to do shit as quick as we should. And everyone's doing stuff, you know. Bloody Alan's playing with Ghost today, so all that shit. But yeah, so everyone's very, very busy and doing other things, but trying to make it work.
Unlike me, No Haven's the only thing I've got going on at the moment. But yeah, it's just that thing, you know, when you're hanging out with someone, you're like, oh, we gotta start a band, like fucking this or that. You're like, yeah, let's fucking do it. Got a drummer and this lined up, and then it just never happens. Or like, you know, you message him a week later, like, hey, remember the time you want to start this kind of band? Like, yeah, let's fucking do it, and then it just never happens. So that's where I'm at. But you know, I'm sure there'll be another project in the works in the not too distant future.
It will definitely happen. I've got about 3 other types of bands I want to do that I just don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do them with the other band going on. But you know.
Yeah, I'd love to start another doom band. Like that was like the only shit I'm like capable of like writing riffs to, or like even just kind of, you know, godfleshy industrial kind of stuff.
That'd be
like,
pretty sick, actually.
Yeah, like I tried to figure out how to program drums in a drum machine like last year, but I gave up. I wasn't gonna spend like $200-300 on an 808 or some shit.
$10 is too hard. I got Pro Tools and then tried to learn how to get good at home demoing, and I paid like $600-700 on it, and I just, none of like my things were working. I was downloading and putting into it, and I just gave up because I get so angry at technology. The 2 things I get really angry at is technology not working as it should, or flies. The 2 things. Everything else is chill, you know. Yeah. I don't care. It's just technology and flies can fuck off.
Yeah. I really just want to do a band without a drummer. Like, no diss on Alex or nothing, but you know, I feel like a drum machine, like you can like turn it up way louder in the mix, and it's not something you see heaps of. And when you do see, like, fuck, that's interesting. Yeah, like,
that's true.
Yeah.
I talked to Dave Hunt of Anana Thrack the other week.
Oh shit! Yeah, they're playing on Friday.
Yeah, they're playing on Friday. But like, it's funny because they have a drum machine for the albums, but they only started touring when they figured out people could actually play their music live with drum kit, which is weird. Like, why not just tour with a drum machine? Yeah. I don't know.
I saw them at Dark Mofo like a couple of years back, and it was the fucking funniest show ever. Like, they're a good band. They don't take themselves seriously at all for that thing. But there were just people like jumping up on stage, getting their dicks out.
He mentioned that.
Just doing the windmill, and then some woman got up on the stage who was obviously drunk, and someone was like, "You can get your dick out." She's like, "No, I lost my phone." And like grabs the microphone off the singer into like the Odeon, which is like, I don't know, 2,000 cap room, sold out. At Dark Murphy was like, "Hey, has anyone seen my phone? It's a Sony Xperia." Like, so fuck, if that show on Friday is anything like that, then you're in for a treat. Like,
that's so good.
Before we finish up, any last things you want to mention? I don't know, say?
Thanks to anyone who bought a shirt or has actually listened to the album, and yeah, it means heaps just people listening to it. It's really, really all I can ask for.
Yeah, and thanks for inviting us on your pod. Like,
appreciate it. Thank you.
Happy to talk some shit. We're playing a couple of shows, so keep an eye out for that. We're playing with Cult Leader at the Tote
on the 13th of April.
13th of April, and the 19th of April with with Pagan, Blind Girls. Bats is the other band.
Bats, there we go.
Yeah, and I'm listening outright. So
cool.
Yeah, the 2 shows we've got lined up. You know, we haven't got many locked in, but the 2 we've got, you know, they're going to be good. So
hopefully we've learned how to play the songs by then, since we haven't jammed for every year. So
yeah,
I think we'll be alright.
Yeah, if anyone wants to press our record on vinyl,
go for it.
You know, go for it, because we certainly can't afford to.
That's a good shout out, actually.
Yeah. Please press our album on vinyl.
That was Nervous Wreck by No Haven. Before that, we heard Sinkholes, and the first track was Cesspool, all from the album Deep End of Shallow Lives. Thanks again to Mikey and Will for joining me in the studio. Really, really great to have people, sort of that connection that you can't really get over the phone, as much as, you know, some of the great conversations I've had with people over the phone. Just before I go, I went to Download this week. Really, really cool festival, in particular because of two bands that I've wanted to see for a while and just haven't got around to: Judas Priest and Slayer. And other great bands I saw were obviously Alice in Chains, and up the top were Voyager and Ruin, so really, really great to see those guys as well. But in terms of Judas Priest and Slayer, I thought I might give a recommendation from their catalogues of two albums. Check it up a little bit. So for Judas Priest, Sad Wings of Destiny, released in 1976, it's kind of one of the first albums that really starts to etch out what becomes traditional heavy metal. It's, you know, incredibly ambitious in a way. I think that's not necessarily exceptional in the case. Obviously, you have other bands which kind of begin to carve the road for heavy music, but this, it's just deeply resonant with me. It's heavy, yet very emotional, and it features some of really the best vocals ever put to tape. I released an episode with my friend Alan on just before the festival, and I'm planning to do a review show with her maybe later in the week, and there we might go through some of the thoughts about, you know, Judas Priest and some of the other bands. Slayer, obviously, it's Rain and Blood, one of the heaviest and most aggressive albums ever really released, despite the fact that more heavy and aggressive genres have come about since. It comes in a brief but just incredibly crammed full 28 minutes. And if you look back at history of this, you know, this broad thing we call extreme metal, it's perhaps one of the most influential albums on the scene. You don't necessarily get that if you look at kind of the bands that have formed, the death metal bands in particular, because they kind of became something else subsequently. But if you check out some of their early work, some of their work before they really became who they were, Slayer is such a clear influence, very, very clear influence. I'm thinking in particular of going back to the Cannibal Corpse documentary, Century of Torment, the first 25 years, I believe it's called. And you listen to that, and I think, you know, Cannibal Corpse, I think some of the other bands they played with, I think were in the documentary. Very clear that Slayer is a profound influence on those bands. So yeah, incredibly important albums, and they're some of my all-time greats, and, you know, obviously some of the greats, as you'd notice in any kind of list of heavy metal top albums. Thanks for listening. You can, of course, contact me, australianhunger@gmail.com. Any comments, questions, thoughts. If you're in a band and are interested in an interview, hit me up and maybe we can work something out. You can also contact me on social media, AusHunger on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Until then, I'll catch you later. Bye.